There we go. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We see some people are still coming in, but we want to thank you for coming to this fun webinar. We've had great fun with this ZenTalk series with Claudia, and it is delightful to talk today about the art of possible and the impact of AI on unified analytics. The idea behind today's webinar is to really chat about what AI and analytics can look like. It's not about what exists. It's not about our product functionality. It's more, it's largely conceptual. It's largely what are we thinking about? What do we hear? And that is why it's lovely to have Claudia, who is a thought leader and I am pleased to say friend of ours, and widely respected in the industry, and Heena Sood, who has a wealth of background in terms of, well, both of these ladies do, of course, but Heena is also internally a wonderful thought leader and visionary for our organization. And Claudia, would you mind moving to the second slide? There we go. There are the lovely bios, so you can see the official of these wonderful women. But today we wanted to just talk about how to be thoughtful about AI and what that means to thoughtfully embrace AI for our organizations. So we wanted to share some thoughts and ideas, and just to recap for you in case you hadn't been to any of our previous Zen talks. The first one we held, I think, 2 months ago or so, but it really, it was with Claudia and another internal thought leader, Saurabh Kara, our CEO. We talked about the challenges of self-service and what happens when you enable people in the organization. Yes, it's wonderful. And yes, it helps make organizations more data-driven, but also it can get out of control, and there can be a proliferation of analytics assets, reports, dashboards, whatever. And so it can kind of create some confusion, and we called it a swamp, almost an analytics swamp to navigate through in terms of finding the right information and insights. So we talked about the challenges of that. And then part two was, all right, so what do organizations do to bring that into the scope of control? What does it look like to govern that? What does it look like to have stewardship over the analytics, not just data stewardship, but also analytics stewardship? And today, so we looked at where we've been, what organizations can do, and today we're looking to the future in terms of the art of what's possible. And so with that, I will give it to Claudia, and mind you, I want to say, we want this to be conversational, and that is our hope with all of these Zen talks, but also we did have a couple of rehearsals because there's so much to talk about. And so there are more slides, and it's a little bit more formatted than usual, but also, Claudia, thank you for the work to prepare us and talk about a little bit of the history of AI and what that means in terms of the scope of what we're going to discuss today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, let's start out with this. Oh my, AI means so much to so many people. It's now an official buzzword. Everybody has to have AI, whatever they mean by it. But let me talk a little bit about the history of artificial intelligence, that AI. It actually is thousands of years old. Believe it or not, it started with the philosophers way back when they were talking about myths and stories and rumors of these artificial beings that were endowed with intelligence and consciousness by the master craftsmen. Okay, that was a nice dream, but it set people off thinking about how do I create these artificial beings, if you will. What happened, fast forward to the 1940s, yes, that's 80 years ago, the 1940s, we started to see the first computers. The first ones were analog. They were created by a guy by the name of Conrad Zuse, called the Z1 and 2. Then he went on to create digital computers, the Z3 and 4. And of course, we got the Turing machine, and we got the ENIAC and all of that stuff. Wow, go forward to the 70s when all of a sudden artificial intelligence got another boom. people started paying attention to it, and by about 1975, it faded. It was no longer being funded by the governments, and it went into what they call the AI winter. I had never heard that term before. Then if we go to the 2000s, AI again suddenly raises its head again. We now start to see, because of what's going on with our technologies, we start to see AI being used in academia and then going into industry because of the new methods, the applications of the powerful computer hardware, and of course, the collection of massive amounts of data. Now, I got to tell you, artificial intelligence still has a long way to go until it is truly artificial intelligence. But what happened during the 2000s is we found a segment of AI that was actually pretty darn cool, and it became augmented intelligence. Yes, it's still AI, it's under that purview, but it's called augmented intelligence. So I want to talk about that a little bit. What we're talking about here with augmented intelligence, and Heena, I'm going to cue you in a second to talk about your thoughts on augmented intelligence. But we're talking about assisting people in the discovery and use of information and insights. It's that AI-driven, if you will, AI-assisted, but still human-driven processes. So, Heena, talk a little bit about your understanding of augmented intelligence.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you. And that was great. I learned something about the history of AI myself, but I love the word AI winter. But sort of talking about, what do we mean when we talk about AI as augmented intelligence? Obviously, people are at the core of any sort of technology implementation, right? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to make the jobs of the people responsible to deliver business value, business insights easier and simpler. So in terms of how we look at augmented intelligence, our goal is really for using augmented intelligence to assist those human-driven processes, whether that be business processes that drive teams, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on in the session, or it's individual, human processes where individuals are responsible to sort of make, learn from the insights or the data or the information. How do you sort of make that better by providing, capabilities using augmented intelligence that helps them do their jobs better, right? So whether that's recommendations, whether that's, recommendations individually, or it's more broad in terms of those business processes, or it's about, the overall management of an ecosystem. So I don't want to give away too much, but we're going to talk a lot about this as we go into some of the details around the key considerations and how ZenOptics is viewing this. But I just wanted to sort of insert the thought that it is, people are centric to this concept of augmented intelligence.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that again, I guarantee it. But let's talk a little bit, let's sort of drill into ZenOptics and why augmented intelligence, AI, can even be done in something like that. What ZenOptics captures is metadata, a massive amount of metadata. And they collect two types of metadata. They collect, of course, the traditional metadata that is about the data and the analytics, how they were built, what the algorithms and data went into them, and so forth and so on. But there's a second metadata that I think might even be even more useful, at least to the business community, and that's the metadata about the usage of the data. So to me, what ZenOptics has is this massive amount of intelligence about the data and the analytics and the people using it. So that to me is the intelligence that we're talking about, the intelligence behind the metadata itself. So let's talk about, wrong button. Let's talk about the potential at ZenOptics and where our definition of AI comes in. We talk about the analytics metadata, and I mentioned the usage metadata. Well, the first one, analytics metadata, is really useful for that AI-driven curation and cataloging of analytic assets. it's also incredibly useful for cataloging any of the machine language or real AI models, LLMs, and so on, and the algorithms behind them. And that's, gosh, that's good intelligence. And then both analytics and usage metadata can be used in the governance area, helping to, as you mentioned, govern the entire environment. Again, both of them, analytics and usage, helping people by presenting smart recommendations. You use these types of analytics. Here are some others that I found for you, that kind of thing. Again, analytics and usage metadata being used in NLP, natural language processing, for search and analysis. And then usage metadata by itself is really good to help people with automating their workflows upon request, predicting a workflow or something like that. All right, Heena, talk to me about what you're doing.
Well, a lot of thinking in the think tank at ZenOptics is in progress around how we can actually, bring all of this to fruition. There's definitely value when we think about an AI-driven curation process in terms of, the categorization of content, right? Being able to have rules in a rules engine that will allow us to understand the metadata that's coming in based on the report names, the report descriptions, the report fields. What can we do to leverage, and how do we sort of automate the curation of content into business areas or lines of business or functions that a steward can then sort of check off and say, yes, this makes sense. These set of reports, whether they're coming from ClickSense, Power BI, Tableau, it should really not matter. This is my set of sales reports. This has, sales metadata all over it. This is what, we think it should look like. Here's a recommendation, right? So that's sort of the thought process on the curation side, where we're going to leverage the analytics metadata. As far as leveraging the analytics metadata along with the usage and those use cases, it's focused on, at a very broad level, the concept of recommendations. But the concept of recommendations spans across, whether it's governance models or it's individual recommendations for your individual analysts. When you think of a governance process, we have a lot of product development initiatives in play right now in terms of defining a true report governance model. And what I'd like to see do is enhance that with the augmented intelligence around usage, right? So if you're using something but it's not certified, right, then that's your opportunity. Kick off a governance process on that, right? So there is a lot of sort of ways in which the augmented intelligence can help us make that entire report governance capability stronger and more effective. And obviously, when it comes to natural language search, just the ability to track who's searching for what the most common search terms are, how can we correlate what peers are searching for and, say that, okay, here's what someone has searched for, do you really want to look, here are some of the other terms that people are looking at, right, in your organization. Do you want to look at this as well? And, you searched for this, but here's also something you can look at. So it's limitless in terms of how we're thinking right now. And we're focused on working with our customers to really identify those use cases that will provide the business value. And we're gonna hit on that when we talk about the key considerations, because it's all about doing AI for the right reasons, right? So I'll hand it back to you, Claudia, because I know we're going to go into that, but hopefully that provides some context in terms of what we're thinking about.
We are indeed. So customers of ZenOptics, put your votes in today. But let's talk about the key considerations, because I think these are the three that I would say are probably the most important. Again, what ZenOptics has is such intelligence about the environment, and that's what they want to bring to bear on their augmentation of the user's intelligence. So the first thing in my mind, in fact, the best key consideration is to focus on enabling the people. How do we make, and it's not just business people, it's the technical staff behind the scenes as well. I'm sure they would love to have some intelligence about the environment. So the ability to enable these people to be more productive, to be able to find the assets that they need faster, to make faster, better decisions, all the wonderful platitudes that we've been talking about for 30 years. Can we get it that much closer with augmented intelligence? The second one is to focus on the business value that AI can deliver. So many companies today claim they have AI and they're just deploying something called AI just for the sake of having AI. I'm sorry, but a lot of vendors really don't think through the business value. What are they bringing to the table that's going to help the business? And then the third one is to focus on the insights found through analysis and decisions to be made. And again, what we're trying to do with augmented intelligence is allow you to make those decisions, whether they're technical or business oriented, that much faster, just a little bit faster. Find it faster, make the decision faster, and make it with better data. So that to me are the key considerations in any AI-driven environment or AI-driven project. Heena, your thoughts here?
You know, this is sort of a underlying fundamental principle in how we are approaching. These considerations are core to our overall product strategy. When I go into the product discussion next, you know, you'll see, I'll tie some of this into that, but the focus on the people is, you know, people as individual contributors, right? The analyst roles, people who are trying to do their day-to-day job in the overall analytics ecosystem, leveraging the analytics pipeline, you know, whether that is to support decisions that, you know, the analysis, right? The actual looking at the information, making sure that you're looking at the right information. How do you do that better and smarter with AI? And we'll talk about some of those items when I go into the product discussion. As far as focusing on the business value, right? Again, if we are trying to make those business processes faster, more effective, and or automated, the goal here is what is the business value that we're delivering with the augmented intelligence that can enable that, right? So if it is, you know, the recommendations for workflows around how do you automate your month-end close processes, right? How do you look at KPIs that are standard across the industry and bring that into the KPI repository model that you're building in ZenOptics, right? What is the information or the intelligence that can augment that process? So that's sort of where we focus on business value. And then as far as overall, right, focusing on the insights found through the analysis and decisions to be made is at an organization or an enterprise level. What can we do with all this wealth of information that comes from the metadata? The metadata being core to this in terms of, you know, the data, the metadata about the data, the metadata about the assets, but also the metadata on the usage. So how can I rationalize my environment to sort of make it more manageable? And we touched upon this in one of the, you know, in both the previous Zen talks, right? How did we get here, right? What did self-service do, right? And then how are we solving that with an analytics catalog? But now we've got to see how do we sort of take it to the next level to drive it through the augmented intelligence, right? How do we make it more effective? So I think I can go into, you know, before I jump into the product discussion, Claudia, is there anything else you'd like to add to that or comment on?
You know, I think you've nailed it. I think that what's interesting is that there's so much that can be done here. Just an advisor that says, wow, you like this report? Here's a whole bunch more that might be of use to you. Or the biggest problem that I see in many environments today is the incredible amount of redundancy. People that are creating the same reports or very similar reports over and over and over again. And why not have a little helper on the side that says, hey, this already exists. Yep. So do what you're doing. Don't waste your time reinventing the wheel. Put your time into making a decision. So I really love this direction of focusing on the people, focusing on the business, and making sure that they can do faster. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
And if I may jump in, Heena, I was just going to say what I love about this is that it's not just about the individual, but you both have also explored, what this can mean for teams, and then what this means for the organization as a whole. Mm-hmm. So we often think about, all right, this makes my search easier, but it's not just about that individual level. It's about, all right, so what does this mean for everybody I interact with? And then mm-hmm. Also, how does this drive strategic value for my organization and ultimately impact the business as a whole? So that's what I love about the aspects that you've covered thus far.
Well, you said it so much better.
He always does.
All right.
Thank you.
Heena, you want to dive into what's behind the screen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, when we look at the overall analytics ecosystem, it's not just about the BI tools anymore, right? It's embedded analytics in applications, data sources that, the data consumers or the analytics producers want to sort of understand. And at the core of the whole sort of platform today, these are sources of information and or data, right? That ZenOptics really ingests and or catalogs. If we think about what we do with that today, right, and where we're going with it is to insert the ability to do the report optimization and rationalization right at that point of entry. It is a continuous process. It's not a one and done, right? But today, our vision is that as we ingest the content, we can identify what the redundancy is through the duplicate algorithms that we are building. That's fantastic. I don't even need to bring that content in. But in today's world, our customers are already doing this because they're able to easily identify what those duplicates are once they've already ingested the content, and they're doing this through a process of categorization and rationalization through our overall, statistics, right? And the whole aspect in how we ingest the metadata around the report information, the usage information. Now, if I sort of inserted that report optimization and rationalization process right up front, that's the goal, right? To make it sort of more, transitive throughout the entire platform. But when we talk about discover, compose, scale, and we introduced this concept in the previous ZenTalk, these are, the standard pillars in how ZenOptics looks at our overall product strategy for various capabilities. Discover is mostly focused on, the actual analyst, the end user who's actually running those reports. And to what Claudia alluded to earlier, right? How great would it be if I had a little helper sitting right there, a little ZenOptics assistant, telling me, or helping me find the information I need or guiding me to the right information. Let's say I'm looking for quarterly reports, right? I can go and ask the assistant, well, what are my quarterly reports out there, right? So there is the aspect of how do we enable those individual contributors, whether they are, analysts producing reports or whether they are end users consuming the reports. An assistant is just an example of how you could enable sort of the discoverability and the overall consumption in ZenOptics. Moving to sort of the compose layer, we look at compose as supporting the overall, governance, the process workflows, the recommendations. And when I think of this, at the core is the recommendation engine, right? The recommendation engine that can recommend to you, well, here is a set of reports that, most people are using on a frequent basis at this point in time. Why don't I go ahead and kick off a report governance workflow, right? Or here is a set of reports that your finance team seems to be running every week. Maybe there is some analysis that they're trying to do every week. Well, here is a workflow that I would recommend that you create, right? So there's a wealth of sort of information there or use cases that we're exploring right now. Another one is around enriching our metadata through, the LLM models out there to really drive the KPI repositories, right? And enriching our KPI repositories with validation around the metric definitions, right? What are the standard industry metric definitions? Or maybe here are all the KPIs. I see a bunch of sales and finance reports. Maybe there is a KPI or a standard metric that is missing, right? Do you want to create this? Do you want to look at analyzing this? So there's a lot of sort of that room for how augmented intelligence can help. And obviously the scale component goes to the enterprise level where, overall, we should be able to drive the collaboration. We should be able to drive, the rationalization and the personalization of information for the teams, the individuals, in how they are using the content. I'm using, this report, and maybe my colleagues in my department are running a whole set of other reports that I'm not aware of, right? Well, I would like to know about that. What's popular, what's trending, what is most used, right? How can I the goal of augmented intelligence at the end of the day is to help people do their jobs more efficiently, right? And that's where the focus needs to be in terms of focusing on the people and the business value. So we are looking to drive that through the Enterprise LLM Studio, where we will enrich the catalog with the, build on the active metadata and guide and provide these guided analytics frameworks, ultimately forming the, if you think of the Netflix of analytics, providing you the capability, whether it's an individual or a team, to have, a conversation, right? Whether that's a ZenOptics assistant or whatever that may be, right? So another concept in terms of, so we talked a lot about the value from an end user, a team, the enterprise in terms of, how they can leverage the insights. But there is also value in terms of managing the environment, right? And if you think of sort of a ZenOptics kernel where there is a command center that's really learning from information around how the environment is actually being managed. How is it scaling? Is it ready to scale to sort of the next level of analytics content, right? Is it, what are sort of the issues we're seeing? Which users are reporting what kind of issues? Can we understand where the problems are and proactively solve those problems rather than wait for them to get reported? So there is obviously a very business-centric view to this, and then obviously a more, platform and a technical view to it. So I'm going to take a pause because I spoke a lot.
That was wonderful. Thank you. I had to giggle as you were talking about the assistant and the ZenOptics assistant, because in our conversations leading up to this, Claudia has voiced it harkens back to the olden days when we were using Microsoft Word and Clippy would pop up as this, "Hi, I'm your assistant." And Claudia has very specific opinions about Clippy, but we've come so far from that. And we are happy to say that we've come so far from that.
I am too. He was a sleazy guy.
Yes, but whether it's guided assistance for the end users, or whether it is the automatic curation of the assets for management and being able to set up the platform better, or whatever it is, it's ultimately helping everybody be more intuitive about the way that they go about things. And that it's just this augmentation, this artificial intelligence augmenting the way that humans work. I'm going to be so bold as to say that it allows us to be able to work more intuitively and be able to work the way that our brains think. And so through this recognition of the usage data, the recognition of the metadata about the data itself, all of these things are designed to help the analytics process and get us to insights faster. So it's ultimately about I like the phrase insights enablement. I heard that the other day, and that resonated with me. But I want to ask, now I've done too much talking. Claudia, do you have any last thoughts? We wanted to keep it under a half hour, and we're super close this time. This is awesome.
Let me go to the last slide so that we can plug the.
Yeah. All right.
The only thing I have to say is many thanks to ZenOptics and the wonderful people at ZenOptics for giving me this opportunity to talk about these three very different, but very interesting topics. And especially the conversations while we were doing these talks, they've just been wonderful for me. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you.
Claudia. Yes. Claudia is an esteemed advisor of ours, and we are so grateful for her participation, not only in this, but for her insights into guiding the way that we think about what ZenOptics can look like. And then Heena also pours her heart and soul into ZenOptics, and you can see that she's passionate about not just the product, but also how we can help customers and how we can help people with their use of analytics. So it has been my great pleasure to work with you and Saurabh on the first one in these series of ZenTalks, and I am very pleased to be able to announce that we will have a new series of ZenTalks with another advisor of ours, Donald Farmer, starting in September. So watch for more information about that. The topic is still being hashed out, but I'm sure it will be great fun, just as all of these have been. And in the meantime, I wanted to say that all of these, if you missed any of these sessions, they are available at zenoptics.com /resources. So feel free to look them up there. And we are grateful for your participation and hope to see you in the next series. So thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Heena. Thank you, attendees. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.